I'm Matthew Stahl. Welcome to the second episode of The Propaganda Review, where I analyze modern propaganda material and try to get to the truth of the story. In this episode, we're returning to the People's Republic of China to examine the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, a massive global infrastructure development campaign created by the Communist Party. It is the central pillar of Secretary Xi Jinping's foreign policy, and revered as the means by which the nation can achieve the famed Chinese Dream.
It is certain that with the firm leadership of the party and the great unity of the Chinese people of all ethnic groups, we will achieve the goal of building a great modern socialist country in all respects and fulfill the Chinese dream of national rejuvenation.
The core strategy of the BRI involves investing into infrastructure projects in foreign nations, especially, though not exclusively, in the global south, all in the interest of securing control over trade. The campaign takes its name from the famous Silk Road, which facilitated the trade of commodities, culture, and ideas from east to west and vice versa. China is attempting to make it as painless as possible for developing economies to trade with them. However, the BRI is not meant to directly improve the conditions of the global south. It's purely infrastructure. Xi is right in his claims that the BRI projects are beneficial to both China and the host country, but that benefit isn't going to reach the host's average citizen. Oftentimes, like Montenegro's Road to Nowhere, that economic subsidy may just go right into the pockets of corrupt politicians.
There's not enough money to renew Montenegro's crumbling infrastructure. The finished 41-kilometer stretch of highway ends in this gravel road. Chinese lenders are willing to supply more money to extend the highway, but that would be a big risk. If the government defaults on a loan payment, state property could be seized.
So if we are not bringing back the sources which are needed for paying back the loan, then we may stay without of some of the public infrastructure which is meaningful, like energy infrastructure, railways, or port.
But even in the BRI's most successful projects, they can often provide little help or even harm the general population. Take, for example, Pakistan's state-of-the-art port in Gwadar, funded by a loan from China and built by Chinese workers. Prior to Chinese investment, Pakistan made a deal in 2007 with the Port of Singapore Authority, PSA, to develop and operate the port of Gwadar. However, the PSA did not invest the $550 million they had agreed to in the contract. In 2013, Pakistan awarded a contract for the development of Gwadar instead to the China Overseas Port Holding Company, which included a revenue split of 91% going to China and just 9% of revenue going to the Gwadar Port Authority. The Gwadar Port Authority itself, despite being a state-owned enterprise of Pakistan, is now under the operational oversight of the China Overseas Port Holding Company. Essentially, China is reaping most of the benefits of the Gwadar port. Pakistan, and especially the people of Balochistan, the province Gwadar is in, have not been helped by the development of Gwadar. Before it was sold to Singapore and then China, Gwadar had a mostly fishing-based economy. And since its development, most of the Baloch fishermen have been pushed out of the city, worsening poverty in what is already the poorest region of Pakistan. Coinciding with the better trade relations with China, Pakistan limited trade with Iran, which also contains areas along its border with Pakistan where Baloch is the majority ethnic group. Iran's Balochistan province is also its poorest. Uprisings in Balochistan from a population that feels like their governments are ignoring them are put down with extreme force. Journalists who report on atrocities in Balochistan are targeted by the Pakistani intelligence agency, the ISI, and often die under mysterious circumstances while living in exile in the West.
I want to tell you about my colleague and friend, Sajid Hussain, who was a brilliant journalist out of Balochistan, and he got into trouble for reporting a fairly straightforward story that the intelligence agencies didn't like, and he was a wise man. He was not into taking unnecessary risks. So he left the country immediately. After sort of struggling for 10, 11 years, he was given asylum in Sweden. And a year later, he was found dead, drowned in a lake. The Swedish government told the family that it's a suicide.
We don't know how they died, but it's very difficult to digest that someone who actually fled Balochistan, came in the West, was happy why he or she would commit suicide here.
This rebellion squashing is what led to Pakistan and Iran's short spat in January of 2024. Both sets of missile attacks sent by the two countries into Balochistan killed around a dozen women and children. Pakistan chose to take China's loan for many reasons, but one of the most important is that unlike other loan organizations like the IMF or World Bank, China does not cancel loans if the recipient is found to be committing human rights abuses. The consequences of the Gwadar port's development are not unintended or novel. There's nothing dramatically new about what China is funding in the Global South. These are projects that line the pockets of corrupt leaders, provide Chinese companies with projects and the Chinese workers with jobs, and leave the local communities worse off. It's neocolonialism, the same kind exercised by the Western powers, disguised by a false promise of mutual gain. The image that China projects of a new Silk Road to connect the world and bring prosperity is just propaganda to gain the consent of the people whose land and wealth is being used to rebuild the Chinese empire.